We are super excited to welcome to Just Dance an amazing choreographer, director, and dancer, professional dancer, and everything else under the sun, Brian Friedman, who has worked with so many amazing artists like Rihanna and Beyonce and Pink and Usher, and of course, Janet Jackson, not to mention Britney Spears. Brian, thank you so much for spending time with us on the show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to see you both.
So excited right now.
So T, you kick things off.
All right. So, first of all, I'm really thrilled because half the reason that I love doing the show is I actually just to kind of reconnect with people because it's just time is weird. Time sometimes feels like it's been forever, and then I see faces and I go, oh my gosh, this is like we were just in a room somewhere stretching. So it's really, really, really great to see your face, and I wish I could come through the camera and hug you, and I'm hoping that will happen soon. But what I like to do is always kind of start at the beginning. And I know you're probably told this story a million times, but I like people to understand kind of where we've all started and then kind of how our journeys, how we've come together and like what brought you to the magnificent man that you are today. So give us just a little bit of background of like how you started. I think your mom has a studio, right?
Yeah, my dance background and history, it truly does come from my mom, who was a dancer. She grew up dancing in, your typical small town dance studio, and she lived in Iowa, and she would travel to Chicago. That was the closest big city for her to dance in. And she was accepted into Gus Giordano's company when she was a teenager, and her mother said, absolutely not. You have to finish school. You're too young to be in the city. And so she did. And her father opened a dance studio for her in her small town when she was still a teenager. And that's where she sort of crafted her love of teaching dance. And then she went to college. She met my dad. And that was the end of that dance career. She got married, she had kids, and they moved from Chicago in the Midwest to Arizona the year I was born. She started teaching dance again in Arizona. She was teaching at Scottsdale Community College. So I grew up being around her and watching her dance classes, but never really pushed into dance. It wasn't something that I think she wanted to push on me. I found it on my own. She was judging a talent competition when I was 11 years old, and I saw kids step on stage and dance that were my age. And it was the first sort of aha moment, because I loved to dance before that. I loved to dance around the house. She would teach me things at home. I loved all the musicals that I grew up watching, which of course in my house with her, that's all we watched. So I was inundated with dance. But once I saw people my age do it, it's when I knew it was something I wanted to do. So I asked her, please take me to this dance studio. And she did. And I never left. I walked into that first dance class. I saw the girls that I had seen on stage, and I was in awe of them. And they were so sweet to me and so welcoming. And my goal was that I was going to be in that dance that I saw at that dance competition. And I got put in it. So I was like, yes, you can dream and you can achieve. And the rest for me as a childhood dancer was sort of sealed that day. I never left. I started attending dance conventions and competing with them. My mom got a job teaching at the studio. So she was teaching me formally then in the studio along with the other teachers there. My friend that I danced with got a scholarship to go to take class at Dupre, which back then there were two studios. It was Tremaine and Dupre. And I went for the summer to take classes with her. And while I was at class at Dupre, it's funny, I remember being in the waiting room and watching the first class before me before I walked in. And there was this girl in a leotard and a bun, and she had so much spice to her dancing, and it didn't match the way she was dressed. And she came out of the class, and I introduced myself. I'm a kid, and it was Shawnette Hurd, who was on scholarship at the time. And that's how I met Sean, when I was just a little tiny thing. But I took class, and an agent was watching, and I came out of class, and she came up to me and said, "Where's your mother?" And I said, "Oh, she's not here. I'm with friends." And she gave me her business card and said, "Have her call me. I'm an agent. My name is Victoria Morris. I'm an agent at JHR, and I want to sign you." And so I was, of course, very excited. I went back to the hotel, called my mom, told her about it. And then within a matter of weeks, we had to come back to LA for an agency audition. And it was for Marguerite Derricks, who was auditioning for the junior division at JHR. My first time stepping in a room with Marguerite. Kim Wolf and Kelly Cooper were assisting. It's like all of these things just sort of happened so fast for me. And I signed by the agency, and my first audition was for the movie Newsies, which the audition happened in 1990. I went to the audition, as green as you can be. I had to sing, I had to dance. They set me up with an acting coach and a vocal coach, and I went through the process, flying back and forth. 4 auditions later, I ended up booking the movie. It was working for and with Kenny Ortega and Peggy Holmes and William Holden and all of these other amazing greats, and not to mention the cast that I was with, people who I had been watching in music videos my entire life growing up, people who I idolized, being with them on set for, we shot this film over the course of almost 9 months. It took me out of school. It put me on set. I was doing set school. It all made sense because I absolutely hated my normal life. School didn't resonate with me. It wasn't taught in a creative way, and I was a creative learner. So it just didn't make sense. And all of a sudden, everything around me made sense. And it was a tornado that never stopped. And I mean, it really never stopped. Ever. I went from dancing, and I went from actually doing that film. I auditioned for a show called Kids Incorporated, which was a big show back in the day. It was sort of the rival of Mickey Mouse Club. They were both on Disney. I grew up watching it on ABC, Saturday mornings. Every morning I would wake up and watch the show. So actually auditioning for the show and then booking the show, I did it for 3 years. So my life, once I got that first audition, changed completely as a kid. And then I turned 16 and I was not cute anymore. I got really tall. And I couldn't really work as a minor anymore. And I couldn't work as an adult because I wasn't old enough. And that was sort of the first hardship, not even a hardship when I look at things, but for me, it was a bit devastating because I had this rhythm going. And then all of a sudden I wasn't booking jobs, which was a shock to me. And I had to move back home to Arizona, and I went back to normal school. And my mom and I decided we would open a dance studio. And that was when I was 16. And we opened our studio together. And I really feel like that was the place that I found out that I had a voice for movement and making up choreography rather than just dancing. And not thinking I was a choreographer, but it was just something I enjoyed to do. It was a creative outlet for me. And looking back in hindsight, those were the years where I was actually honing my gift for being a creative and being a choreographer and running a room and having responsibility, all those things. So it was definitely a good incubation period of time, but it was also a period of time that I loved and hated because I wanted to be in LA and doing what I loved. And I sort of resented the fact that I was still at home and teaching kids. And it was a love-hate relationship. Story short, I turned 18. I started working as an adult again. And then I was torn between these two worlds of flying back to Arizona and teaching my kids, leaving, them hating me every time I left, coming back, having to repay the wounds that I inflicted on them by leaving. And we decided to close the studio in 2000. It was after 7 years. Neither of us wanted to do it anymore. And so we sent our kids all off to other places. And that was the end of that chapter. And I could truly fulfill what it was that I wanted to do in LA, which at that time was still just dance in 2000. I hadn't really set my sights on choreography. Although when I did Star Search and I was 14, Ed McMahon said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a choreographer." And I don't think I even meant it. It was just the career transition path that I saw in front of me from dancer choreographer. But I enjoyed my dance years so much. I enjoyed being an assistant so much. I don't think I jumped the gun in terms of when I was supposed to do it. It naturally happened for me to move into choreography. I was asked by the choreographer that I was assisting to take over this project because they couldn't be there. And I was hesitant. I wasn't sure if I was ready. And they said, "You've got it." And so I did it. And Julie McDonald was watching the rehearsal right before the show and came up to me and said, "Okay, do you want to do this?" And they had just started her new agency, MSA, which at that time was only repping choreographers. And I was like, "I don't think I am a choreographer." And she said, "No, I know what you've been doing with your studio in Arizona, and that is choreography." And I was like, "Okay, I guess." So that was it. She signed me as a choreographer, and that project went really well. And it led to another and another. And then some of the work that I did right in the beginning then really took off in pop culture. And I feel like if you have a moment like that in your career that really is a moment in time that everyone remembers, you're solidified. Your role is solidified. So I'm very grateful for those first couple of gigs just turning out right, because it set the tone and gave me a platform to be able to continue to grow on, which it went into creative direction. And that took me into really working behind the camera. And it got me into producing for television. And it just sort of snowballed. And I was always a type of person who, I don't want to say I got bored, but I would see a shiny new thing and want to run into the light. And that's kind of how I viewed all of these different aspects of the career. And I don't look back with regret, but I do look and think, what if I wouldn't have been such a Gemini trying to do all the different things, and I would have just stayed in one lane and I would have just focused on that thing? Would it have been a different path? Like, who knows what it could have looked like right now? Because I see people that do that. They're like, "This is what I am," and they just own that lane and stay in it. And I've just never been that type of person.